Hello and welcome, Warhammer fans. This is Poohead189, and today I'm going to be talking about, well, a lot of things. This video is a basic overview of what any citizen of the Empire would know, the basic geopolitics of the Empire and the various provinces within the state. First off, I'd like to let everyone know that I have a new Patreon page you can support me on, where you can help increase the quality of the channel and discuss things with yours truly and other subscribers. I also have a relatively new podcast where I interview science fiction and fantasy authors. There will be a link in the description below for my podcast channel. It's a privilege to be able to talk to people like William King and Nathan Long. And if you donate to my Patreon, I can hear your suggestions on who you want me to invite next on, and we can discuss questions on what I can ask them when I talk to them. Alright, now that's out of the way, let's get into the video. The Empire of Man, contrary to popular belief, is not a single nation with a powerful central government. It is a nation, but it's a confederation of 10 feudal provinces who are together only by a shared language, faith in Sigmar, a mutual culture, and an elected emperor who loosely rules from the province of Reichland. There are two types of states within the vaster empire, provinces and city-states, but the latter is usually exceptional rather than a normal way to govern. The 10 provinces are Reichland, Weissenland, Averland, Middenland, Nordland, Ostland, Talabecland, Stirland, Ostermark, and Hochland. We'll talk about each province soon enough. The emperor is elected every time a previous emperor dies, and there is a coalition of individuals that make up 15 votes in the elective assembly. 10 for each elector count of every province, along with the Grand Theogonist of the cult of Sigmar, along with each of his 2 archbishops, and the All-Ulrich, or the R-Ulrich of the Ulrican faith, and the mayor of the Mootland. If you're a citizen of the Empire, you speak Reichsspiel, which is a language based on German, though there are some slight differences, just like how Low and High Gothic in 40k are based on Latin, but not entirely the same. Now let's delve into each province briefly to get you acclimated to them and the Empire's basic geography. To start off, the Empire, while the most powerful human nation in the old world, if not the Warhammer world, is still rife with danger. It's filled with beastmen, greenskins, mutants, bandits, giant spiders, trolls, and more. However, generally as a rule of thumb, the further north you go, the more dangerous the landscape gets, because chaos is more powerful the closer to the poles you get. However, I say that with a grain of salt because there are still plenty of dangers in the south, and though the roads might be safer, there are many places that give exception to the rules. The ruins of Weissenland, the black and grey mountains that teem with goblins in Skaven, the waterways that hide river trolls in Reichland. The Empire is just dangerous, as the Warhammer world is, and that's not even getting into the inner problems of secret cults and political intrigue, which happens more in the south. The south generally has rolling hills, rapid rivers, and arable land, whereas the north generally has heavily forested lowlands and deep waterways, though the Empire as a whole is covered in woods and forests of some sort, and so we move on to the provinces themselves. We'll start with Reichland, which is arguably the safest and best regulated province, where the Emperor rules both the province and the Empire on his seat at Altdorf. While danger is still present, people from Reichland are generally the best educated and most well off in terms of wealth, so people in the other provinces think of them as stereotypically posh and snooty. Reichland is also known for its very fine wine. The Emperor, or the modern Emperor, is Karl Franz, who is actually an extremely good statesman and a very, very good emperor. He's also a very cunning and powerful warrior. A lot of people think that the Empire would have fallen if not for his intervention in many times in the past. Going east, we find ourselves in the province of Weissenland, snug between the rest of the Empire and the Black Mountains. Weissenland's folk are generally sturdy and are known for not talking much, preferring to use their actions rather than their words. They have good relations with the dwarfs, and they even have a province-wide shame of them being unable to save the old province of Saarland, which was destroyed by an orc war boss named Gorbad Ironclaw, and the province was integrated into Weissenland itself. This was hundreds of years prior, but the ghosts of the dead still linger in Saarland ruins. You cannot talk about Weissenland without speaking of Nuln, however. Nuln is probably the second greatest city in the Empire, but just behind Altdorf. Maybe Middenheim is better, but Nuln is definitely up there, and it is famous for having the greatest gunnery school in the whole of the Empire. The ruler, Countess Emmanuelle, sits within, and while the beautiful woman is daring and intelligent, there are rumors she wishes to make Nuln an independent city-state separate from the rest of Weissenland, and as it's a very wealthy city in the middle of a very glum province, and she sort of wants to just rule Nuln. Going further east, we reach Averland. The folk of Averland are famed cattle farmers, and they also get along quite well with the dwarfs, as they generally make sure to stay true to their word and they don't mind getting their hands dirty for an honest day's work. So, they're very much like Weissenland folk. They're known for being a curious folk, however. Their last elector count was quite literally insane, and they delve into strange subjects such as astrology within the cities. It's one of the few provinces that isn't completely covered in forest, as there are many rolling hills and pasture land. Going further north, we make it to Sturland, a province filled with highlands and rugged forest. It's probably the poorest and least modern of the provinces, and they believe rapid change or innovation is a sign of chaos. The Elector Count, Albrecht Haupt Andersen, also has jurisdiction over the old province of Sylvania. Now, Sylvania is its own can of worms, but just so you know, it's the land of the vampires. It was integrated into Sturland after the last vampire war, where the Empire defeated the vampire counts. However, the vampires are still very much alive, they're just far more subtle nowadays. People still refer to Sylvania as an independent and cursed land, though as I said, it is technically within Sturland now. To the west is Talabecland, a province of rangers, foresters, and trappers, as the entire province is covered in forest, save for the great river Talabec that, while it spans the whole of the Empire, still stretches across Talabecland. Both the river and the province are named after the province's curious deity, Tal, father of the forests and god of beasts. His wife is Rhea, mother of the earth and all things that grow. While Sigmar is technically the state deity, and most people do give him his due respect, their main patron gods are Tal and Rhea. Talabecland is also known for its potent beer. Helmut Feuerbach, the Elector Count, who's known for his great temper, resides in Talabheim, the capital and a city of great commerce as it straddles the river Talabec. Let's go to Hochland next, the province across the river Talabec. If Talabecland is known for its archers, Hochland is known for its marksmen with rifles. It's a common joke that Hochland men are more fond of their long rifles than their wives, and it is true that Hochland long rifles are a superb weapon and their marksmen are prized in the Imperial Army. The Hochlanders share traits with Talabeclanders, because they too are good trackers. They also share traits with other northern provinces, being a rough people who live in untamed wilderness. While it's a smaller province, it's still formidable. Aldebrand Ludenhoff, the Count, is one of the most seasoned military veterans with the rank of Count, and he loves hunting and hawking. North of Sturland and Talabecland lies Ostermark. It is a somber, bleak land of vast moors. It's stuck between Sylvania, the World's Edge Mountains, and the vast trackless wintry plains of Kislev. Even people from Middenland think it's a bleak land. The people of Ostermark are an even harder people than the other imperial provinces. It's a province of small villages and towns relying on one another for survival. It is said that its women know how to be widows because of how dangerous the province is. It's also said a wife seldom remarries once widowed, for no Ostermark husband would stay in Mor's realm knowing another man was with his wife. Both sexes show extreme fortitude and pride, and the province's folk are stereotyped to have long drinking binges and elaborate funerals. They're quite good light horsemen and monster slayers, and they often sport long mustaches rather than beards. Between Ostermark and Nordland is Ostland. Ostland is a land ravaged by war, with many areas warped by chaos. Some openly doubt whether she can recover from the last incursion, though if anyone could survive, it's the Ostlanders. They're probably the most stubborn and bull-headed people in the Empire. In fact, their flag is of a crimson bull. Ostland is a realm of damp, creeping mists and shifting shadows, and is covered almost entirely by the dark canopy of the Forest of Shadows. The Forest of Shadows, while filled with monsters, also has the distinction of having the only colony of wood elves outside of Athol Loren. It's a very small clan, and they move like the shadows, so there is no real diplomacy. They're pretty much a part of the local superstition now. Ostlanders are notorious for being able to eat most anything, and their frugal nature alongside it makes for some fun jokes. There is a claim that Ostlanders make stone soup with only one stone, for fear of wasting good rocks. Stone soup isn't a real soup, but it makes for the stereotype. The Elector Count is Valmir von Raukov, a warlike and understandably paranoid count. To the west, hugging the Sea of Claws, is the province of Nordland, a forest-filled province filled with rough, uncouth people. The Nordlanders have quite a lot of Norscan blood in them, though they make up for it by being staunchly anti-chaos and some of the Empire's most loyal fighters. They're quite good at woodcraft, so much so that even the Hochlanders and Talabeclanders think they're pretty good. Nordland has a very prevalent storytelling tradition, however they are also known as being some of the most honest folk in the Empire. Many think it's because they're blunt, they're too stupid to lie, or they're so barbaric that they never see the need. Truthfully, while not stupid, they do have many rough customs. Some disputes are still solved with trials by combat. Also, contrary to what you might think, Nordlanders are not great sailors, even though this province is where the Imperial Navy and most of its sea trade occurs. That's because the Norskins, who live to the north, control the sea, and while the other members of the provinces control the navy and their land, the Nordlanders are fit to make watchtowers and fortresses and to fight the Norskins once they beach. Of course, the north is not the only place the enemies come from. Their forests also have beastmen aplenty. And, to note, there's a fair few Nordlanders that worship Rhea, the earth goddess, as well as Ulrich, the god of wolves in battle, but a lot of them are still devout Sigmarites. Finally, we find ourselves in Middenland. Middenland is likely the second most important province, bar Reichland, for various reasons. This province is also probably the most dangerous one to live in, for one simple reason: the Drakewald. The Drakewald is a forest filled with so many beastmen, orcs, giants, dragons, and chaos creatures that the Empire sent in 2 armies to slay all the beasts, and both armies disappeared. At best, you can regulate the Drakewald and hope nothing too terrible spews forth from it. The Drakewald is in other provinces as well, stretching into bits of Hochland and Ostland, however it makes up nearly all of Middenland. Middenland's people are stubborn, like most Northerners, but they're known for their ferocious tempers. Its capital is Middenheim, an extremely important city that is known for not only being impregnable, but it also houses the leader of the Ulrican faith, the Jarl Ulrich. Ulrich is the god of wolves in battle, as I said earlier, and when Sigmar was a mortal man, he himself worshipped Ulrich. The count is Boris Todbringer, an extremely determined warrior count with a lot of lore to him. Let's just say he's fought many battles, isn't good at making an heir despite his wives, and he was nearly the last emperor before Karl Franz got the title. Well, now that we've tackled the various provinces, basic stuff on language, and the Emperor, let's talk a bit about religion, most notably the Sigmarite religion, at least at first. Now, the cult of Sigmar is pretty much Catholicism mixed with Norse paganism, and it's as badass as it sounds. Sigmar was once a mortal man, a powerful barbarian man back before the Empire was made, about 2,500 years ago. The land that would become the Empire of Man was beset by a massive orc horde. Sigmar not only gathered every one of the 12 tribes of the land to his cause to fight against the orc horde, but he saved the life of a dwarf king, Kurgan Ironbeard, and the dwarfs made an oath of alliance with the manlings that had lasted to this day. Sigmar defeated the orcs, as well as doing a bunch of other epic shit, became the first emperor, and he ruled for 50 years. His rule was good, though he did need to fight off invasions of Norscan armies, and even a vast army of dead where Sigmar fought and defeated fucking goddamn Nagash in single combat at the gates of Altdorf, back then known as Reichdorf. One day, on the 50th anniversary of his coronation by the Jarl Ulrich, he left the Empire for an unknown reason. At his left flank, a massive wolf, and at his right flank, a massive boar. His face set in a grim visage as he marched east to the World's Edge Mountains. The next year, the Jarl Ulrich received a vision of Ulrich placing a crown of godhood on Sigmar's head, and thus the cult of Sigmar was born. And also, to talk a bit about Nagash. If you don't know who Nagash is, trust me, anyone who can fight him is massively powerful. The cult of Sigmar is now the state religion and the most prevalent religion in almost every province, save a few like Talabecland worshipping Tal and Rhea, and Middenheim and Nordland still being devout followers of Ulrich, for example. There are other gods that aren't focused on within certain provinces, of course. The god of death is named Mor, and most imperial cities have Mor priests who preside over the graveyards to give last rites and to make sure the dead do not rise. There's the goddess Shalia, and while Sigmar and Ulrich are known for being the 2 largest religions, everyone invokes Shalia in times of need, for she is the goddess of healing and mercy. There's also Renald, god of tricksters and luck, who finds his worship across the old world, and then there's also Esmeralda, the goddess of halflings, whose portfolio is hearth and home. Religions other than Sigmar are tolerated within the Empire, but not to any extreme extent. Talbot land is considered an oddity for worshipping the forest gods, and the only reason that Ulrican faith is so large is because Sigmar himself worshipped Ulric when he was a mortal man. Or at least that's the reason why the Ulrican faith is tolerated for being so large. It's so large because the people up north need a warrior god to help them. Not to say that Sigmar isn't a warrior god, but Sigmar is slightly more lax than Ulric. Ulric is literally a god of winter, wolf, and battle. The cult of Sigmar, however, controls the empire. Priests, warrior priests, Templar orders, and witch hunters of the Holy Inquisition are all employed by the Sigmarite Church, and the Sigmarite Church has 3 votes on the council that elects the next emperor, more than any one province. So the Sigmarite Church is huge. What you now need is a brief history lesson. This history lesson I'm about to tell you shaped the modern empire, and that is on the last great Chaos invasion, called the Great War Against Chaos. It was 200 years ago, almost approximately. It allied the men, the elves, and the dwarfs in a great alliance as they all marched northward to fight the massive horde led by the ever-chosen named Azavar Kull. Essentially, a chaos warrior chosen by the dark gods to lead the forces into battle, meaning the Everchosen. The elves from Ulthuan were led by Teclis the Archmage, who gained a respect for the humans and actually taught them magic, creating the colleges of magic. Of course, there were apostates and minor magicians in the Empire before, but Teclis saw that humans could at least handle some magic, and since the humans were trustworthy enough to fight against chaos, he thought, you know what, we should pay attention to these hairless apes, and we should, actually teach them a little bit of what we know. The High King of the Dwarfs, High King Alricsson, made it back alive, but he relinquished his throne to the current High King Thorgrim Grudgebearer. The most important part of this history lesson was who became the leader of the Empire. Magnus the Pious, someone who everyone in the Empire knows, as people believe that he is either Sigmar reborn or he was one of Sigmar's chosen. A minor noble from Weissenland, Magnus saw that the Empire was not giving the Chaos Incursion its due efforts, and that it wasn't acknowledging that Azavar Kull could sweep over the entire Empire, so Magnus took it upon himself to lead his men to Kislev. If you remember, Weissenland is the southernmost province of the Empire, and he marched northward, passing through nearly every province, preaching along the way and gaining more soldiers and followers until he was the leader of an entire army. And many people believe he slew Azavar Kull in single combat at the Battle of Prague. Whatever happened, he became the next emperor and ruled better than any before him save Sigmar himself. So, just keep in mind, Magnus the Pious, huge deal. He's essentially like Moses, or perhaps even close to Jesus, for the Sigmarite Church. Okay, so it's been a long video, but we're going to try and finish it up here with a small topic called geopolitics. You might not think that the average Imperial citizen would care, but they get their stereotypes and rumors of other races and peoples from how the government interacts with these factions. We'll begin with the dwarfs of the World's Edge Mountains. The Empire's longest allies, it still is an odd friendship. The men see the dwarfs as insular and secretive, and a very grim folk. They do see the dwarfs as allies, but most don't understand the significance of why, Sigmar's deed being nearly 3,000 years ago. But to the dwarfs, it's still a binding oath of alliance, and they keep to their word. Many imperial cities have dwarfs in them, though the dwarfs, while cordial and sometimes even jovial, only show aspects of their culture if they really trust whatever manling they're talking to. They almost never speak Khazalid, their language, around other races. The men of the Empire know the dwarfs are incredible craftsmen, engineers, and strong fighters. However, they are not above racism, and disputes can arise between the individuals. The men of the Empire are widely superstitious of vampires, and while they don't hate vampires as much as dwarfs do, they believe they're about as bad as chaos, which is terrible, and it's for very good reason. While some vampires are more nuanced, and not all are bent on taking over the Empire, every citizen will likely think they're undead mass murderers, and as I said, for good reason. Humans also see any other undead creatures with suspicion and fear, like ghosts, zombies, wights, and ghouls. Back to the vampires, an Imperial citizen will, as I said, think that they're as bad as any worshipper of chaos. They'll call the witch hunters, they'll try to see them dead as soon as they can, and they'll run away in fear as well, and they should. Next, let's talk about the elves. There are 3 sub-races of elves, but the Empire is not privy to this information, or at least most of the common folk. The elves being too haughty to not tell the humans on the mainland that they've experienced some schisms in their past. Therefore, anything a dark elf slaver does, or a wood elf scout does, the men of the Empire think the high elves of Ulthuan are always doing. Now, the Empire knows it's allied with the elves in the past 200 years ago during the last Great Chaos Incursion. However, they still either don't trust them, or they're in complete awe if they meet one. Some races men of the Empire see in a way you'd expect. Greenskins such as orcs and goblins are pretty much dangerous and vile vermin that can grow to be huge threats if they band together. An orc is also always more dangerous than an untrained human, so they're seen with some fear. A goblin can fight a human, but the goblin would need to be either armed or have something heavily in their favor. But yes, greenskins are always seen as barbaric enemies, just like the beastmen. Beastmen are notable for hating humanity above all other races, but humans see them as they'd see any dangerous humanoid, something that should be exterminated. Some people in the Empire see the ogres in the same way, but stories often come from the east of ogres ruling a vast kingdom, and many of the ogres you'll see in the Empire are mercenaries, so they're somewhat tolerated since they're probably already employed by a lord. The Empire's greatest rival is probably Bretonnia, the human nation to the southwest. Past the Grey Mountains and Athol Loren, where the Wood Elves reside, Bretonnia is a kingdom formed by various duchies. They are a faction that is about 300 real-world years behind the Empire in technological advancement. They still live in what we consider the 13th century, though that doesn't give the Empire as much of an advantage as you might think. The Empire has gunpowder and steam-powered weaponry, but Bretonnia houses the finest knights and heavy cavalry in the whole of the Warhammer world, likely. They also have very good archers, and their art and holy magic is something to not take lightly. Now, the Empire and Bretonnia have fought before, but they generally put aside their differences when a greater threat emerges. Some people in the Empire think Bretonnians are exotic or something to take note of, but many think of them as a strange, backward folk and people a part of an inferior kingdom. For people new to the franchise, Bretonnia is essentially medieval France mixed with the King Arthur legends. They even have French accents. Let's move north and talk about 2 separate cultures. The first is Norska. Norska is the Warhammer equivalent of Scandinavia, and the Norskans are like Vikings of our world, except they are even more barbaric and they worship gods of chaos. Raiding, pillaging, and survival of the strongest is the way of life. A lot of them have mutations from Chaos Taint. They frequently raid the Empire. Now, there have been some diplomatic talks with some Norscan tribes that aren't tainted by chaos, but for the most part, hell no. They're huge enemies of the Empire. To the east of Norska is Kislev, which is essentially Warhammer Russia and Central Asia. Kislev and the Empire have long been allies, though they each think the other is strange. Their horse archers and ice magic are famed, and whenever Kislev is attacked by Chaos Hordes, the Empire helps. Because if Kislev falls, the Empire is next on the list for any Chaos invasion force. That leads us to the big one, Chaos. Now, Chaos takes many forms, like beastmen or cultists, or dark wizards. I've made videos in the past on Chaos, its origins, and its connection to magic, but all you need to know is the poles of the Warhammer world are shattered warp gates, and Chaos flows into the world through them. So for the Empire, the further north you go, the more Chaos taint there is in the landscape and the air, and if you go north of Kislev and Norska, you reach the Chaos Wastes, which are filled with beastmen, Chaos warriors, demons, mutants, and some even say the dark gods themselves. Periodically, massive hordes move southward to kill and plunder Kislev and the Empire. Chaos is everyone's enemy, but the Empire has a particular distaste for anything Chaos-related. Chaos is not tolerated in the Empire whatsoever. We'll now move southwards. The Kingdom of Araby, which is located at the top of the Southlands, and the Southlands is essentially the Warhammer equivalent of Africa, is seen as an exotic land of spices, magic, dancers, and legends say the sultans there have treasures rooms larger than any dwarf hold. However, they are often seen as thieves, and the Empire sees them as notorious heathens. There was even crusades against them centuries ago, though it was mostly Bretonnia, Tilia, and Astalia that attacked them. Only the Empire's nobles and knightly orders that chose to make the crusade joined. This leads me to Tilia and Astalia, as well as the border princes. Tilia is Warhammer Italy, and Astalia is Warhammer Spain. They're both nations filled with city-states that war with one another using mercenary armies. The Empire has a neutral stance on their nations and people, though they respect their culture and exotic accents. The Border Princes have a similar reputation. A lot of Empire citizens and nobles that are shamed move to the Border Princes to find new lives for themselves. It's seen as a land of opportunity in a way. So is Lustria, the home of the Lizardmen, a land of steaming jungles and dangerous lizardmen that the Empire loves to explore with intrepid expeditions. The Empire doesn't exactly acknowledge that the Lizardmen have a civilization to begin with, much less the most ancient one in the whole of the Warhammer world. When an Empire man thinks of Lustria, they think of the cities made of gold and the giant lizards ready to eat you, and despite their ignorance, they're not far from the truth. Last but not least, let's talk about the Skaven. The Skaven are a myth to the people of the Empire. If anyone from the Empire sees a Skaven, they think it's a form of beastman when it's really not. Those that do know of the Skaven's existence are either called crazy or they keep their mouths shut, because it would cause panic to the people of the Empire to know that millions of ratmen infest the earth not 100 meters below their feet. Damn, this was longer than I thought it would be, but it is very rewarding that I made this. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, comment below, and if you want to, support me on Patreon. Thanks everybody.